Hey friends, this is Kelly from Mathematically Enthused, and I'm here to talk to you today about using numberless word problems to support student success. So, if we're going to support our students in understanding and solving word problems, there's a lot of things that we can do. But let's backtrack a little bit. I don't think there's been a time in my life as a teacher and maybe even as a student when I heard the word problems and jumped for joy. Let's be honest, they're not our students' favorite things. They require more higher order thinking. And for some of our students, that invites an opportunity for them to shut down. So, in order to be really explicit about how to teach our students how to solve these problems, we're going to delve into numberless word problems a little bit today. So, word problems. Challenging for students. We know that. Why? Well, so many reasons. One of them I'm really going to blame on our curriculum, on our textbooks, on what's written for us. Unfortunately, unless you go out of your way to avoid doing this, our students see word problems in isolation. You're in the division chapter, you're dividing. You're in the multiplication of fractions chapter, you're multiplying fractions. And unfortunately, that kind of gets our students into this mode where they're not going to try to think differently about the word problems in those chapters because the work is kind of done for them. So, the other problem I'm going to show you right here, something that I am guilty of myself, friends, and that is assigning keywords to operations. In fact, this little guy on Pinterest right here is beautiful. And I used this a few years ago with first grade students. I'm pretty sure I've used almost the exact same chart with third grade students. I love the idea behind this. However, this ties students to some rigid thinking. They're thinking then, okay, in all always means either add or multiply. But even then, that creates a problem for them because there's overlap with that word. So what I'd really like you to do is be really brave and move away from tying single keywords to word problems. I am in the process of doing that myself. It is a work in process. It's my 14th year teaching, but I'm still trying to get better every day. So I'm going to talk to you about how I'm going to use these numberless word problems to try to make myself a better math teacher for my students. So the example I'm going to show you is one that I'm using with 6th grade students in Math Lab. I'm also trying to develop these and set these up for all of my students across all the grades. What we want to encourage here is a lot of thinking about math, a lot of talking and discourse about math, and the comprehension of what the problem is asking before moving forward. We talk a lot about either CRA or CSA, concrete, representational, abstract, concrete, semi-concrete, abstract. This is kind of that idea behind teaching math, but now we're applying it to word problems. So the one I'm showing you today, I've designed specifically for remote instruction, but this is a little bit of how it's going to go. And I'm leaving this view open for you so that you can also see the notes on the bottom. These are some of the guiding questions I'm going to use for discussion. Before I even go there, and yes, we're looking at some delicious donuts, but before I even go there, I'm going to go to the student input sheet here. So this first section, I notice, I wonder, is meant to be for this first picture. So how can we connect donuts with math? What kind of mathematical questions can we ask about donuts? So that's where we can have our students talk about I notice, I wonder, right? I notice that in this picture there are 9 donuts. The donuts are arranged in rows of 3, right? So they have an array here. They're arranged in rows of 3. That's a quick noticing. I wonder how many donuts in all. How many hours does it take to make donuts? right? Because hours are still talking about mathematical concept. We're talking about elapsed time or the passage of elapsed time. So these are some mathematical questions that your students can jot down, and this can become discussion. My plan, friends, is to do this over like 4 or 5 days. And on this first day, just talk about how we're going to connect donuts with math. Because as we know, math is literally everywhere. And if you have not read Math Curse by John Cheska with your students, I don't care how old they are, it's a good laugh and it's a good reflection of how math is literally everywhere. So yeah, there's math and donuts. There's donut math, and it's not just I ate one donut plus another donut and two donuts, and now I'm full of guilt and calories. It goes way deeper than that. So here we are. Here's our first numberless word problem. We would tackle this on day 2 with my students. This is a quick 5-minute conversation or warm up. So Maeve baked some donuts. She sold some of the donuts she made. So here's some of our guiding questions now. What are you picturing in your mind when you read this story? This one's pretty concrete. Somebody's baking donuts. You don't even need to worry about the gender of the person. Somebody's baking donuts. Does the gender even really matter? No, not in this case. She identifies as she. That's great. That's her pronoun. But the gender of the person doesn't matter. So somebody is creating donuts. And then from that batch of donuts she created, she's selling some of them. So now we're going to talk as a class and have them jot quickly. If we added numbers that replace the word some, what are possibilities for the first sum, S-O-M-E, we're looking at, and the second sum that we're looking at? Well, if she baked some and then sold some, that number she baked has to be greater than the number she sold, because you can't have negative donuts, right? We don't go to Dunkin' Donuts and they don't tell us we owe you a donut. There's no negative donut, right? So, well, sometimes there's a negative donut. It comes with calories and guilt and all that kind of stuff. But in this problem, there's no negative donuts. So we could start with simple things. Well, she baked 12 donuts. She could have sold 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Probably not 0 because she sold some of them. She could have also sold 12. She could have sold them all. So this is our second day of discussion. At this time, this is when I'm going to have a student sketch a little something. It could be a bar model. It could be a stick figure with donuts, just to get some of their ideas down on paper. Now, because this is remote, their option here is using some shapes, right? So she made some donuts, and then potentially she, out of those donuts, is going to end up with less donuts when she's done. However they want to represent it, right? So made, sold, right? So that's what she made, that's what she sold. That's just an idea of what's happening here. So then the next day we're going to come back and we're probably going to look at 2 of these slides in the next day. So now we have a number. Maeve baked 8.5 dozen donuts. She sold some of the donuts she made. Well, now we know the first number. So what could the second number in the story potentially be? And now we're talking about dozens of donuts. Do we need to know what a dozen is? We don't even know for this problem yet if we're going to apply any kind of figuring out of how many donuts that is in all. We just know that she baked 8.5 dozen. So she could have sold anything from 8.5 all the way down to a half, right? A half of a dozen, because we're talking about dozens here. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll move on to the next slide. She baked 8.5 dozen donuts. She sold 2 4/6 dozen of the donuts that she made. Oh, fractions. I can hear the groan every time my students would do fractions until they felt comfortable with them. So that's what we're trying to get to here. But she baked, sorry, I don't want to repeat myself here. So now we're looking at mathematizing on this day. So we talked already about what's happening here. So if she baked them and then she sold them, what is the operation that we need to pull out of this? What are we envisioning in our head? Well, she's baking some, and then a portion of them are going away. So then we start to talk about subtraction, how that can be represented, and we would start to also talk about how, in this particular problem, are we going to get to the part where we're able to solve that. So in this mathematize spot, I borrowed that word from something I heard Joe Bowler say. I don't think she took claim of that word. Somebody else is using that word, but this is where you're going to put in your mathematical sentence. So we know we've got 8.5 dozen, and then she's selling 2 and 4/6 dozen. So that's my mathematizing. So I took this picture that I created up top and I made it into something that we could solve. So then in this last day, or this could be the third day, it's up to you how you want to tackle it, and how much time it takes. They're going to type here what their solution is or work it out on paper. This is printable in their classroom. So when we get to the very last day, there's a short video for them, just a little bit of payoff. Now, what could be cooler than that? First of all, it's a Billie Eilish song. Second, donuts, watching donuts be made. So it does relate to the problem, even though it's not an exact and direct correlation. There is a little bit of payoff for them that, like, hey, here's a quick little video. I can see how the process of this is done. The hope is that when we're done with this, we have now reviewed not only comprehension of a word problem, but we've also reviewed how to do the process of subtracting fractions with different denominators. So that's why I say I'm going to tackle this over the course of a week, is that we're going to take it off in bite-sized pieces, right? So how do we eat this elephant that is making numbered or word problems easier for our students? Bite by bite. So a little bit every day. We're going to work on this in our room. We've started a little bit. I will report back with how it goes. If you are interested in digging into some of these, I am happy to share it with you. I'm going to be getting my email list up and running. I have 10 of these numberless word problems for 6th grade. It's really review of 5th grade content right now, but my email list hopefully will be up and running by the first week in October. So come check out my Instagram profile. My link to my email will be in my bio. I would love you to like and subscribe here and follow me on Instagram at Mathematically Enthused. I'd love to hear your feedback. Hope you guys are having a great day. I love being your virtual colleague, so please come visit again.